evidence, Your Honor. Commission states 531Y. Chapter 1, 263G. It's no better than 263H. May Mr. Kokomo plate, Your Honor?
You may, he may.
Do you think that Doug wanted it on the earth against him? I told him he's trying to get him that. So there's like no sanctions. If some shit happens, and I'm from Chicago, so I know about gang life and all that stuff. So if there's something done without quote unquote permission from the higher ups, it ain't no kind of who's in the door high. That's what I heard.
You should. Who the ball? Who coronavirus?
He wouldn't even on his start watch.
Who started? Our brother.
And slow. Take it up. So
What about DJ?
they did. Cause they were around full. I'm telling you who started. Take slow. And some like 3 more they from that these people that were already grew up though. All of them started. Then they slow, he goes go. You put him he told go what's going on. You go this.
Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
And in that section, that is Jeffrey Williams 263G and H. And there was a break in there. I apologize, but that was continuous, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's where Mr. Zachary is asked whether Jeffrey ordered the killing of Mr. Thomas, right?
Yes.
And his answer is no, right?
Yes.
And you explained, I'm from Chicago, and that you need permission from higher ups. I'm not quoting, but something like that. And Mr. Zachary said, who said that his word is thug? I call him Jeffrey, is the higher. Remember that?
Yes.
All right. And then you said that's just what I heard. And then Mr. Zachary said he's not the boss. He's not the higher. Something like that, right?
Well, Mr. Zachary went into who started it. Just because you don't start a gang doesn't mean you're not a leader.
Yeah, but Mr. Zachary also told you throughout this entire meeting with you that Jeffrey Williams was not involved in the killing of Donovan Thomas. In fact, he learned about it later, right?
Yes, he stated that.
And that Mr. Williams was not involved, as we just said, in the shooting of the little Little Wayne bus tour, right?
Yes, he stated that.
And in fact, that Jeffrey Williams rented cars for a lot of people, right?
I don't recall a lot of people, those words.
Rented cars for others. Do you remember that conversation? That topic coming up?
Not renting cars for others, no.
Remember Mr. Zachary explaining that he and Mr. Copeland were in a rental car together?
Yes, and they spun out on the expressway.
And they got in the crash. And Mr. Copeland was the last person Mr. Zachary saw with that car, the rental car. So I want to talk about the Infiniti.
No, that's not what he stated.
He didn't say that?
That's not what he stated, no, sir.
What did he say?
He stated that Mr. Williams gave the car to Nard, Shannon, Yak, and Dua, is what he stated.
said that his manager rented the car, right?
I mean, yes.
And that he allowed others to drive the car, right?
And he went along to state the names, yes.
Okay. And also that he would let others use his cars. Did he not say that?
I don't specifically, that one part of it, no, I don't remember him saying that.
All right. The Sprinter van. Remember those Sprinter vans that we talked about?
Yes, sir.
And the Sprinter van, did you do any type of investigation or get any information when they were summoned, hired, rented?
No, I did not.
And you did know that Jeffrey Williams, Mr. Zachary told you, had performances in the state of Florida.
That's what he stated.
And that's what it was already pre-planned to go to Florida around the 10th of January, 11th of January, 2015, 12th of January, right?
He never said anything about a pre-plan.
He didn't say that it was already, people were already going.
No, he stated Mr. Williams had a show or something, and then they all decided to go. It wasn't a pre-plan.
That Jeffrey Williams stopped associating with some of these people a short time after the killing of Donovan Thomas.
What's your question?
That's my question. That's what he told you.
No, I don't recall that.
You remember Mr. Zachary stating that Thug had stopped messing with everybody. Remember that? Do you remember that shortly after the murder? If you don't remember, it's fine.
He didn't say it in that context. Shortly after the murder, Thug stopped messing with everybody. That wasn't the context in what he said then.
What do you believe the context is?
I mean, if you have the transcripts to refresh my memory, I can read them to you. But that was not the context of it.
Okay. Did Mr. Zachary tell you that he doesn't, by August 5, 2015, doesn't speak with Jeffrey Williams, can't get in touch with him?
He stated that he hadn't seen him in a minute.
Up until you left the gang task force in March of 2016.
Yes, sir.
When was the last time Jeffrey Williams had any contact with Mr. Copeland, to your knowledge?
I don't know.
How about Mr. Zachary?
I don't know.
Mr. Garlington?
I don't know Mr. Jeffrey's contacts on speaking to anybody involved in this case.
There was a portion of this meeting with Mr. Zachary and you and Detective Dennis, and I believe Detective Thorpe, whereby Detective Dennis says something to the effect of YSL is a gang as well as something else. Do you know what he said?
No.
I'm going to play this and tell us if you can assist us, okay? Your Honor, this is states Jeffrey Williams. This states 531Y. Same interview, Jeffrey Williams 263I. As in ice cream, it's 3/18/14 to 3/18/21.
Who did it?
So YSL is a gang, but it's also a cult. Correct? Just wondering.
Do you know what he was saying, if you heard?
Now, can you play that again?
So YSL is a gang, but it's also a cult. Correct? Just wondering.
I don't know what he said.
Now, I'd like to show you, with the state's permission and assistance, states 447Y. And tell me this is what I asked you earlier that you introduced.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me if this refreshes your memory. You remember this?
This a video?
Yes.
You can play it.
We could play it if you want, but do you remember seeing this before?
I don't recall if you play it. It's just, at this point, a screenshot. If you play it, I can tell you if I remember it or not.
Okay. play the first part of it. You don't know.
So nigga, a lot of they mama, a lot of they kids, a lot of they brothers and sisters didn't get ready in the courtroom until the God and the truth. Don't get y'all nigga get fucking killed, bro. From me and YSL.
Remember that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, on there, we have in the background Mr. Sledge speaking, right? You hear his voice?
I heard a voice. Yes.
You don't recognize it, Mr. Sledge?
Not with 100% certainty, no.
Mr. Martinez Arnold's voice?
Not with 100% certainty.
All right. You see where it says repost with app?
No.
Should be on your screen.
It's not on it. Oh, now I can see it. Yeah, now I can see it.
And do you know what that means? Did you do any investigation into what that means?
What means?
Yeah.
What?
Repost with app.
I believe it's some type of app
Do you know what repost means?
to repost something on the social media media.
Did you ever do any investigation to determine the date or dates that this was previously posted?
No.
Do you know when State's Exhibit number 447Y was actually made?
I don't recall.
Do you know whether it was made before the Donovan Thomas shooting?
I don't recall the date when it was made or posted, reposted.
Did you do anything in your memory to find out and look into when was this actually created?
I had no reason to.
How come?
It's not against the law to make a video or repost it.
With regards to you're working with Detective Thorpe, Homicide Investigator Thorpe and the gang unit, including you, are both looking into the investigation into the killing, the shooting of Donovan Thomas and related matters. Fair?
To a certain extent.
And were you kept abreast at times of what Detective Thorpe was doing on the case?
Not all the time, no.
Okay. Did you at times keep Detective Thorpe abreast of what you were doing on the case?
If it was something that I felt was pertinent to his investigation, yes, I would tell him if we found out
Were you
if we found out new information that I felt would help him, yes, I would tell him.
Were you aware at and around October 20th, 2015, until the day that you left the gang unit, that Detective Thorpe swore out warrants for Kenneth Copeland for the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Was I aware the day? No. The day that he did it? No.
Were you aware of it at a time before you left the gang unit?
At some point I did know.
When
It wasn't. At some point I did find out that he obtained warrants.
All right. And when you spoke with and you interviewed Kenneth Copeland several times, right?
Yes.
And also you looked into his criminal conduct. Fair to say? You investigated him, right?
In regards to what?
Anything.
I feel his criminal activity or
Criminal activity.
Your object is to fade.
I'll be specific. You went to his house on June 10, 2015 and arrested him, along with other agents.
yes.
And those agents also were FBI, that's wrong, ATF, federal agents, right?
Correct.
And you located, with permission, in the car outside his home and Miss Gordon's home, you found some electronic devices, computers, stolen identification, things like that. Correct?
Objection relevance. Is there relevance to this? Okay. We'll see. For now.
Yes.
And that rental car, it was a rental car that these items were found in, right?
I don't recall if it was a rental or not.
Do you remember Miss Quarterman's mother rented the car?
I just stated I don't recall if it was a rental car or not.
Do you remember testifying in this trial previously and watching a video?
Of what?
Maybe you didn't watch a video. Do you remember testifying previously? Or did you ever tell Kenneth Copeland you can get Miss Quarterman's mother in trouble because she rented that car and the stolen items in the car? Do you remember that conversation?
At this moment, I don't remember that it was a rental car.
All right. Now, do you remember going back to the August 5, 2015 interview with Mr. Zachary, that he explained that there was a video posted on social media of Mr. Sledge or Muntunk and Mr. Zachary, and it was made threatening Mr. Kelvin Watts, for show Kelvin, do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember Mr. Zachary explaining that was all about trivia?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember Mr. Zachary denying being slime? Remember that conversation taking place?
Yes.
And he saying that there are no rules or loyalty to slime. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember that Mr. Copeland, according to Mr. Zachary, saying August 5, 2015, Mr. Copeland and Mr. Sledge or Muntunk shot Mr. Watts or Kelvin Watts on MLK? Remember him telling you that?
Yes.
And do you remember that Mr. Zachary shared with you that Mr. Copeland shot at the TGI studios?
Yes.
And do you remember that Mr. Kelvin Watts or Shell Kel, Mr. Zachary explained, was shot twice, first by Mr. Sledge and then by Mr. Sledge and Mr. Copeland? Do you remember that?
That he was shot twice in two separate incidents.
I'm going to do two separate incidents. Yes, he was shot. Mr. Kelvin Watts or Shell Kel was shot first by Mr. Sledge and Mr. Copeland. Remember him saying that? Mr. Zachary saying that?
I don't remember him saying two separate incidents. I remember him saying he was shot on Martin Luther King, but not shot at first and then a second incident.
Do you remember a second time Mr. Kelvin Watts was shot at by Trevante? Remember Mr. Zachary telling you that?
Okay. Yeah.
I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
Now, you stated earlier that the way I understood it, it would be bad form to allow potential witnesses to get together and speak before law enforcement officers spoke with them. Do you remember something like that?
Bad form? What do you mean bad form?
It's bad procedure. The witnesses can taint each other if they get together.
Yes, I believe that to be true.
And that's why at times when police come onto a scene, they try to separate, if they can, witnesses. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Because you want the most pure statement from each witness and not some sort of, even innocently, tampering or tainting of witnesses.
Correct, the independent recollection of the incident.
Now, in this case, do you remember on June 10, 2015, explaining to Mr. Copeland that you and your coworkers needed to corroborate, that's a bad word though, but needed to find whether there was information to support what he was saying about other people? Remember having those conversations with him?
Yes.
And do you remember Mr. Copeland saying Mr. Garlington would be a good source of corroboration?
I do.
Something like that?
Yes.
And do you remember Detective Thorpe, your coworker, whatever, APD, lead homicide detective on this matter, being present with you and Detective Dennis during this time? Of that interview?
I'm not saying he wasn't, but I don't recall.
Do you remember it being discussed with Detective Thorpe in your presence and Detective Dennis explained that he would allow Mr. Copeland and Mr. Garlington to speak on a non-recorded line before Mr. Garlington spoke to them.
This is what Investigator Thorpe said? No, I don't recall that.
This is already in evidence. I need the number. You want to catch one moment? Two pages. Yeah, I kept one moment. Mr. Kokomo is pulling out. Can't find it. I'll find you something else where you find it. Yeah, I can go into something else while Mr. Kokomo is doing that. Okay. I want to continue on with June 10, 2015 interview between you and Mr. Copeland and other investigators. Do you remember from the McDonald's, Mr. Copeland's explained that he's at the McDonald's shortly after the murder, not 8 o'clock, I'm not sticking to that time, but something like that, on January 10, 2015.
Yes.
And do you remember him explaining that he's in a car with Mr. Garlington and Mr. Demise McMullen, or Nard?
Yes.
And he is following Mr. Sled. No, that's wrong. Mr. O.G. Bentley or Kelvin Treadwell's car to Jeffrey Williams' Sky House condo. Do you remember that?
I don't remember him stating he was following someone.
Okay. Kokomo, can I break your thought? Kokomo, can I break your thought? Your Honor, this is already in evidence. It states 278YE as an Aaron, and this is Jeffrey Williams 240II, and this is 9:58:14 a.m. to 9:58:46 a.m. 240 II.
So, we don't get spell it. Wait, are they following y'all? Okay, y'all follow this. Yeah, but he told me, hell no, I ain't just follow it. But he ain't got covered. My turn. He touched the head for another. So we followed us to tour. They stayed downtown on Chicago. That's it. I found him there. So I found him there. See, doing it, yeah. So now he got covered.
Were you able to understand that?
Yeah, I remember this in a bit.
Okay. And is it accurate to say, I'm not saying it's accurate in life, but is it accurate to say Mr. Copeland told you that he was following Mr. O.G. Bentley's car to the Sky House where Jeffrey Williams lives?
He said them. I don't remember him saying O.G. Bentley or Bentley's name.
Okay. Let's do this one then and might put it in context. Your Honor, it's the same States Exhibit 278YE. This is Jeffrey Williams 240JJ. The times are 2:57:47 to 2:57:58 p.m.
So when did Bentley pull up? You didn't say Bentley's name. Yeah, he was driving a white truck. He the one took them to Chicago. I just said, you know, they called Bentley.
Were you able to understand that?
This was two separate times of the interview.
Correct. You're saying that this is not from the McDonald's to the Sky House?
So I don't know where you're going with this. I'm kind of confused. You're showing two different clips with two different contexts.
Well, if you don't remember, that's fine.
I just stated I'm confused because this is two separate clips from two totally separate parts of the interview.
Sure. But does this help you to help the jury that Mr. Copeland told you that he followed Mr. O.G. Bentley or Kelvin Treadwell to Jeffrey's home from the McDonald's? If it doesn't help, you just say it doesn't.
Sir, we all just heard him just say that, but in the context that you're putting it in, it's a little confusing because this is two separate parts of the interview.
Well, from your knowledge of